Good morning ko.
Good morning, Impression Hall. It is a Thursday, the 9th day of October, bringing you Morning Matters because your mornings matter. Let's get to the stories that matter today. Senate Blue Ribbon Committee Acting Chairman Senator Erwin Tulfo clarified that the hearings on the anomalous flood control projects are not yet over. He added that lawmakers implicated in the projects, including former House Speaker Martin Romualdez and former Congressman Zaldi Co, will be invited when sessions resume. Outgoing Justice Secretary Boying Remulla has placed 33 individuals on an immigration lookout bulletin over their alleged involvement in flood control project anomalies. The list includes incumbent Senators Chis Escudero, Jingo Estrada, and Joel Villanueva, along with former Senators Bong Revilla and Nancy Binay. And given the scale of this corruption scandal, the question is, what is the effect on the Philippine economy? We'll discuss that with RCBC Chief Economist Michael Ricafort later in the program. Welcome to our program, Morning Matters, where we talk about the issues you need to know for the rest of your day. Now, first in the agenda, amid mounting questions on the fate of the Senate's flood control probe, Acting Blue Ribbon Chair Senator Erwin Tulfo is giving his word the hearings will push through. More in this report.
The Senate Blue Ribbon Committee's probe into the alleged multi-billion peso flood control anomalies will continue. This assurance came from Acting Chairman Senator Erwin Tulfo, who vowed not to let the hearings be derailed despite earlier suspensions. Tulfo also signaled that if no other senator accepts the chairmanship of the committee, he is ready to take on the responsibility full-time.
I'm sure baka may makita pa si Senator Siguro kung wala na talaga. Wala talaga mapili. Then why not?
Senator,
it is part of my responsibility.
But the senator admitted that parliamentary courtesy, a tradition preventing lawmakers from being compelled to testify against each other, remains a stumbling block in the probe. Tulfo argued that it may be time for the Senate to reconsider this practice so that powerful figures can be made accountable.
Siguro pag ako, babaguhin ko, I'll have to consult with the Senate leadership. Ano ba ito? Alisin na natin itong interparliamentary courtesy kasi ito yung sagabal eh. Dahil because of this courtesy, respeto, hindi na iimbitahan.
When the hearings resume, Tulfo said he intends to invite former Speaker Martin Romualdez, House Appropriation Chair Zaldi Co, and other lawmakers linked to questionable projects. Tulfo further hit what he called a double standard in justice system, stressing that due process should apply equally, whether to the poor or to the powerful.
Yun na nga nakakalungkot. Pag mahirap ang gumawa ng katarantaduhan, kulong ka agad, kumpiska ka agad. Pero pag mga big time, due process. Diba? Pag mahirap, walang due process, kulong. Pag nagnakaw nag-shoplift sa department store, grocery store, kulong ka agad sa presinto. Pero pag mga contractor, mga lawmakers, ang haba, due process, taon ang bibilangin. You see the difference?
The Blue Ribbon's next hearing is expected late this October. Tulfo said the committee may forward names and evidence to the Independent Commission for Infrastructure and the Department of Justice to avoid overlapping probes, while the Senate focuses on legislation to plug budgetary loopholes and prevent another flood of corruption.
In one of his final acts as Justice Secretary, Boying Remulla signed an immigration lookout bulletin against 33 individuals over flood control project anomalies. Mobile Journal Amy Atienza has a report.
Another busy day for the Independent Commission for Infrastructure. First, it has summoned later Representative Martin Romualdez and resigned Congressman Zaldi Co. The ICI wants the two to explain allegations of budget insertions and control over DPWH projects during their term as House leaders. Former Speaker Romualdez and ex-Appropriations Chair Co are expected to appear before the fact-finding body on Tuesday, October 14 at 10 a.m. Aside from Romualdez and Co., the ICI has also invited Budget Secretary Amina Pangandaman to a hearing. But since ICI has limited powers, it cannot compel officials and other personalities to show up. The panel has, however, the option of going to court to hold no shows for indirect contempt.
The powers or the authority of the ICI is to issue subpoena. With regard to contempt powers, then we have to go to to follow proper procedure, which is going to the courts and probably file or petition for indirect contempt.
Another ICI action to a request to the Department of Justice to put 33 individuals on the Immigration Lookout Bulletin. The ILBO includes Romualdez, incumbent Senators Chis Escudero, Jinggoy Estrada, and Joel Villanueva, and former Upper Chamber members Bong Revilla and Nancy Binay. Also being recommended for close watch during travels are 10 congressmen, including Roman Romulo, Arjo Ataide, and Marcy Teodoro, as well as former lawmakers, other state officials, and dismissed district engineers of the Public Works Department. These are familiar names. They have all been mentioned in hearings conducted by the Senate and House. It is important to note that an immigration lookout bulletin order cannot prevent anyone from leaving the country. It only alerts authorities on the date, destination, and purpose of travel of those on the list. Only a court-issued preventive hold departure order can prevent an individual from traveling abroad.
The timely issuance of an ILBO or an immigration lookout bulletin order is of utmost necessity to enable the Commission to proceed without delay and to hold those liable accountable to the Filipino people. Right now, it doesn't mean that we will be asking them to, some of them have already appeared, but with regard to the others, the Commission will have to decide on that.
As to the ICI publicizing hearings for more transparency,
As I always said before, iniingatan rin natin na ang mga impormasyon o yung mga inaakusa ng mga aming mga resource persons, in a way, it has to be verified. We're trying to prevent the Commission from being weaponized by any individuals. No? So we have to be careful with that. Kailangan mag-ingat kami dahil hindi naman lahat ng sasabihin dyan tatanggapin na natin na katotohanan.
The Bureau of Internal Revenue has filed multiple tax evasion complaints before the Department of Justice against contractors Sara and Curly Descaya and a corporate officer of St. Gerard Construction. The BIR said the couple's tax liabilities amount to 7.1 billion pesos, covering unpaid taxes from the purchase of 9 luxury vehicles and documentary stamp taxes from their divestment in the company. The agency also found that the Descayas failed to file income tax returns from 2018 to 2021. More complaints against the couple are expected as audits of their businesses continue. Up next, despite being the subject of the intense controversy in the lower house, the unprogrammed funds in the 2026 national budget have now been acted upon by the Subcommittee on Budget Amendments. All that and more when Morning Matters returns. Welcome back. You're still watching Morning Matters here in One News. The proposed on-program appropriations for 2026 has reached 250 billion pesos under the National Expenditure Program. Akbayan Representative Shell Jokno flagged that the items under this budget line include big-ticket pre-planned projects such as foreign-assisted programs, the AFP Modernization Fund, and health emergency allowances.
We cannot continue to treat the unprogrammed appropriations as a magic pot where projects are dumped without accountability. To Speaker, colleagues, I therefore propose that we reduce to zero the unprogrammed appropriations line in the budget. Kami po sa Akbayan Party List ay hindi papayag na gawin gatasan ang kaban ng bayan.
Malacanang, however, defended the allocation, saying it will only be released with proper documentation and safeguards in place.
Hindi naman po ito nagagas na basta-basta. Hindi po ito agad-agad makukuha kung wala pong sapat na dokumento. Kaya malinaw din po na mababantayan ang anumang pondo na masasabi nating nasa under program appropriations.
Some House lawmakers are not keen on giving the office of the Vice President a bigger budget next year. This is after Vice President Sara Duterte and her staff skipped several plenary debates on their proposed funding. The OVP is seeking 902.8 million pesos for 2026, about 170 million pesos more than this year's 733 million pesos. House Public Accounts Committee Chair Terry Redon said the OVP is in no position to make demands, while questions remain over its use of confidential funds. House Deputy Majority Leader and Appropriations Vice Chair Zia Alonto Adyong said Duterte's presence could have helped justify the budget request.
She could have at least defended that and explained to the plenary and convinced the members why she needed that 200 plus increase. Unfortunately, no explanation at all. No? That's why sa amin, my working draft would still be on the 700 million pesos.
And joining us now on the show, we have House Deputy Majority Leader and Appropriations Committee Vice Chairperson Zia Alonto Adyong. Good morning, Congressman. Welcome back to Morning Matters.
Yeah, good morning, Gretchen. Good morning to your viewers.
Unahin po natin itong ang program appropriations. Can you first tell us about the difference before we go to the changes? No? Yung difference po nitong Budget Amendment Review Subcommittee doon sa small committee, kasi ito po yung bagong grupo na nilikha in lieu. Tama po ba? Ano po yung pagkakaiba po ng dalawa?
Well, tama po. Previously, ito yung sinasabi nilang small committee. Ito po yung sa BARSing Budget Amendment Review. Ito po yung mga reforms na ginawa po. No? Apart from yung membership niya ay nag-expand, no? To include to include members from other parties. Kasi we want to make it appear like it's a collective decision from among party leaders and party representation in the House. No? Comprising the majority bloc and even the minority kasi nandun po yung minority leader. But this is also to show na yung process by which this BARC come out with the recommendation to the plenary is transparent. No? Nila-live stream po natin ito. So basically, there's a major difference between the previous small committee and the BARC. Unang-una yung membership, pangalawa the process by which items in the budget, in the NEP, are being discussed openly.
Tapos ito ay magkakaroon na ng report. Hindi tulad nung small committee na hinahanap pa ni Congressman Chanco.
Yes po. Immediately kasi even during the discussion with the BARC, naka-live stream na po tayo. And every items that we discuss, every department na budget ay pinag-uusapan at yung kitang-kita na po, no, yung sinasabi nila ETM, no, real time, yung pag-feed no, live stream. So, yes, the report of the BARC will be directly, ang una po yung ginawa natin ay we presented the initial, result of the first meeting that we had sa mother committee, which is the Appropriations Committee. Tapos, ito pong this time, when we had the last RC meeting yesterday, that would be directly reported to the plenary as a matter, kasi nasa period of amendments po tayo eh. So, ito po i-report na sa committee, as a plenary po, yung magiging...
Okay, so magpe-present po usually dun sa Mother Committee and then amendments are done at the BARC and that will comprise the Appropriations Committee report that will be the subject of plenary debates. Tama
Yes,
po.
but ultimately, Gretchen, this would still be a recommendation, no? Because when you talk about having having a bill passed, it should be the plenary that would approve. So it's still on the recommendatory status pa niya. So once na mapag-usapan ito sa plenary at pagputuhan, yun na yung magiging final version ng House General Appropriations Bill natin na itatransmit naman sa Senate of the Philippines.
Okay. Now, Akbayan Representative Shell Jokno is one of those part of the BARC, right? The Budget Amendments Subcommittee.
No, it's the minority leader. But he is part of the Mother Committee, which is the Committee on Appropriations.
So hindi po siya parte nung subcommittee. Oo. Kasi, go ahead.
Yeah, the BARC nga po, the composition of the BARC are representatives from party members, no, from party lead, yung mga political parties in the House and the minority. In this case, ang sa minority po, kung hindi ako nagkakamali, is minority leader, umupo dyan and some other members po. No? I'm not really sure about the other members yung other members ang tawag dito yung kanilang representation in the BARC. But what I know is that the minority has a representation in the BARC, which is the minority leader.
Well, Congressman Jokno did flag the priority items allocated under the unprogrammed appropriations. Sabi po niya na the budget line includes big-ticket pre-planned projects such as foreign-assisted programs, the AFP Modernization Fund, and health emergency allowances. At malaki pa rin, 250 billion pesos under the National Expenditure Program. So ano po yung mga pagbabago, proposed amendments?
Well, unang-una, tinanggal na po natin sa unprogram yung infra component nito. Before kasi merong tinatawag na sa GIF, no? May infra component yung sa unprogrammed funds. So we took that away. We removed the infra to make sure that in all the services that will be delivered, outsourced out from the unprogrammed funds, are purely for, number one, for social services. Na pag may mga kalamidad, meron pong pwedeng pagkunan ng pondo para to respond, no? At the level of the distraction. Number two, kasi dalawa pong classification yan yung sa unprogrammed funds. Number two is yung mga foreign assisted funds po, no? Our counterpart to make sure that the foreign assisted the projects and programs will be delivered judiciously in expedition and on time matapos, no? So kung may mga loans po tayo, of course we also have to make to ensure that there will be a counterpart from our government. So yun po yung classification ng unprogrammed funds. What is actually should be considered, Gretchen, is that yung how to source out these funds and how to implement these funds. I guess this time, medyo meticulous po ang requirement, ang guidelines on how one can actually make use of these funds for the specific purposes that are detailed under the guidelines in order to make sure that the unprogrammed funds will not be open to any abuses. So based on the experience that we had, yun po yung unang recommendation, natanggalin yung infra component. Sinasabing social delivery of programs in response to calamities and national securities, emergencies. It can only be it can only be used doon po sa mga foreign assisted projects. Alam po natin sa guidelines ng foreign assisted projects is very meticulous and really very talagang rigid po yung naka-detail po at rigid yung doon sa counterpart na binibigay po natin to make sure that programs and projects are implemented well.
Yung AFP Modernization Fund, yun po ba ay tinanggal nyo rin?
Well, that still would be discussed in the plenary again. In terms of the funding for the unprogrammed funds, pag-uusapan pa po yan. Again, it's a recommendation. na ibibigay po sa plenary. But I think yung sa modernization, meron pong ano diyan, meron pong portion diyan na I guess hindi na siya pag-uusapan, hindi na siya i-recommend, but only those salient features of the modernization in the AFP, which also based on the recommendation of the Department of Defense would still be considered. No, I'm not at top of my head, nakalimutan ko lang yung mga items. But portion of the modernization would still remain, and some of them would be, I guess, would be subject for approval and for debate and for discussion in the plenary.
Okay, so with that, the 250 billion pesos will now be reduced to what amount?
Sorry, I mean, I don't have the exact
The
figure
specific
po, ma'am,
figures,
no?
okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm sorry, I
Oo.
cannot give you the exact figure. But still, yung nga po yung what we discussed during the PARSI are the provisions by which this special provisions by which this 200 plus billion and
Okay,
program fund
oo.
is spent.
All right, you mentioned social services, and Malacanang has echoed the same na hindi pwedeng maging zero itong unprogrammed appropriations dahil sa Senado naman ang kanilang proposal ay to entirely scrap the unprogrammed appropriations at lahat na lang magkaroon ng line item program. No? Pero hindi po ba posible yun? Because when you talk about social services and calamities, meron naman po tayong calamity and quick response funds. And we do have, parang meron po tayong mga forecast, ilang bagyong tumatama sa bansa natin, meron tayong mga emergency fund. Hindi po ba possible to put that all down as program appropriations already?
Number one, when you allocate these funds, no, and then assign that to specific budget entries, that would also in a way limiting the flexibility of using these funds. Meaning, kung halimbawa lalagay po natin to sa mga line items, hindi na po magagamit halimbawa to another purpose, no? Because that would be technical malversation of public funds. Now, when it comes to tama po sinabi mo yung QRF, no, quick relief funds, it has a specific duration by which you can actually use QRF. Like for example, the immediate response would be naturally ang LGUs, no, and then that would be for a certain number of hours that would be assisted by the DILG, and then after 48, kung di ako nagkakamali, hours, doon po papasok ang DSWD, no? But the DSWD can only do so much kasi lahat po ng line items nila, it's not really to immediately respond to a calamity that is unplanned and unforecast. Tama po, hindi po talaga may mga means tayo to foresee the coming of the typhoon, but we do not actually know what's going to be the impact of the typhoon.
Okay.
And we will be able to know na magkakaroon tayo ng ganung papasok, pero yung distraction that it might cause to the community, hindi natin alam. For a certain number of days and hours or weeks perhaps and months, the DSW can actually source out yung sinasabi nilang stock ng mga pang-relief na mga ayuda nila. But they cannot actually use the other programs in order to compensate for the needed relief assistance for the victims. So that's where the unprogrammed funds come in. Kasi at least meron siyang purpose, may flexibility siya na gagamitin. Again, Gretchen, it's only a matter of documentation and making sure that program unprogrammed funds will not be used outside of what is intended to be used.
Okay, and I want to go to the other point that you raised. Paano nga ba yung proseso para ma-access mo itong unprogrammed appropriations? Kanino mga pirma ang kinakailangan? Because I remember when we talk about unprogrammed appropriations, yung excess funds nitong DOH na transmit papunta sa National Treasury na dapat ililipat nga po dito sa unprogrammed appropriations. Kasi pag sinabi po natin unprogrammed appropriations, ito po ay di ba, kumbaga savings, meron kang mga dagdag na parang mga barya na yun ang gagamitin mo ngayon panggastos sa iba pang dagdag na proyekto. So, number one, would this be usually accessed by the end of the year? At pangalawa, sino po yung mga pumipirma? At pangatlo, kadalasan kanino po nanggagaling itong mga pondo na ito?
Well, kung di ako nagkakamali po, no, but the way I understand it, program cap is also mostly composed of the targeted revenues that we'll be getting, no. That's number one. And number two, yung about the sino po yung mag-handle then, well, at the top of my head, I would probably assume that the DBM will be the one to handle these funds, no, kasi hindi naman po siya readily available. You can actually access this kung meron talagang number one dun sa dalawang criteria, so talagang impact ng mga calamities. Number two is talagang gagamitin yon for our counterparts alone. So there are quite there are quite number of offices by which the access of these funds and to utilize these funds have to go through. So I'm not really sure how does the executive branch utilize this. Perhaps the agencies that would be involved in terms of social services and response to calamities, that would be the ALJ and the DSWD for one. And of course, DBM will be the one to handle these funds. And us, for the foreign assisted projects, our counterpart would still be an agency, particularly the DPWH perhaps. No? Kasi sa JICA, alam ko, DPWH, they also enter into MOA. So I guess those are the agencies that are involved in sourcing out these unprogrammed funds. But again, to get back to your question, what I know, and I could be wrong, again, I don't intend to admit that I'm an expert on this, but it's essentially the on-program funds are also sourced out from the potential revenue that we may be collected. That's why hindi mo talaga siya po pwedeng sabihin na yes, these are the specific amount. I mean, it's assigned to a specific budget entries because these are still part of the possible revenue that we will be collecting within the span of 1 year.
At klaro na dapat wala pong priority projects na nandito. Kasi kung
Tama,
mag-exist
that's
lang.
number one po.
O,
That's
pag may
number
pondo
one
lang.
Tama. Tinanggal po natin talaga yung infra doon, yung component niya. Doon kasi previously, yung sinasabi po na programa na sa GIF, yung infrastructure doon po, talagang tinanggal po doon yon. So hindi ho siya magagamit doon sa mga sinasabi nilang mga flood control, mga possible na mga flood control yung insertion na sinasabi po previously, no?
Now I ask you kung sino po may pirma rito because of course you want to shield the budget from political influence na kaya siguro nilalagay doon kasi ito kailangan ng nod no ng executive
I agree.
bago ma-release.
Yeah, that's already the role of the executive branch. What we do in the sa House of Representatives is to make sure that there are special provisions, no, that will guide on how to utilize this. And for the specific guidelines, it would be the executive branch that would sila po yung magpo-formulate itong guidelines na ito.
Okay, now let's go to the budget of the Office of the Vice President. What is the temper like in Congress? Is there still antagonism versus this budget? Or has the ground shifted? Because she is requesting for 200 million, no, as said in our report, additional 200 million for the OVP.
Well, number one, Gretchen, what I can tell you is there are a lot of questions that the House would like to ask the OVP, and a direct response supposedly, hopefully, they were hoping that the response would be elicited from the OVP during the time by which the presence are requested by the House, no? Starting from the pre-budget deliberation up to the time that the House decided on the debate, no? Hindi pa naman na-decidean. So, talaga marami pong mga tanong na hindi pa po nasasagot. So you would normally understand na because there are questions that are left unanswered, and instead there's a demand and condition. Of course, naturally you would feel na meron talagang motion, meron talagang move, and may mga efforts mostly from the minority bloc to retain the budget for the Vice President, which is under the GAA of 2025, it's about 733 million. So, pag-uusapan po yan sa plenary tomorrow during the period of amendments.
And speaking of mga katanungan, may katanungan naman po ang taong bayan sa Kongreso. Tapos na po ba talaga yung Infracom hearings? Hindi po ba pwedeng magpatuloy ito? Dahil marami pa rin hindi nasasagot na tanong. Katulad na lamang ng na-bring up ni Congressman Leviste, yung sa DPWH na pondo, parang hindi pa, kumbaga kung alam naman natin na meron ng patong dito sa budget nila, ay anong gagawin natin dun sa naisiwalat sa mga hearings? Hindi ba natin pwedeng makuha yung pera natin ulit ngayon na hindi pa naman nababayaran? If you take a look at the progress of those projects, yung mga ganong katanungan po, hindi pa po nasasagot. So, don't you think that wrapping it up is a little bit premature given the extent of the problem?
Yes, what's so funny, Gretchen, is that during the time na nagkakaroon ng Infracom, na sinasabi nila walang kumbaga in terms of credibility, walang credibility ang Infracom na mag-handle ng investigations, especially na may mga possible na names, no, ng mga members ang lalabas. So tapos ngayon sinasabi nila why did we wrap up, no? Number one, yung issue po kasi nung Infracom at the onset, sinabi naman po nung mga chairman na pag papasok po yung ICI, yung Independent Commission, they will turn over the investigation. I mean, whatever that we have obtained during the investigation, we will turn over these documents to the ICI to give the ICI and to investigate even those members of the House that would be named by some of the whistleblowers, no? Para yung at least yung sinasabi ng mga tao na hindi naman tayo po pwedeng mag-investigate. Even some of our members, no, in the House are questioning the credibility, integrity, and independence of the Infracom to continue on investigating our own ranks. Kaya nga sabi ko nga, if there are questions about, if you have evidence to support your claim that there are House members that have been involved in these anomalous flood control projects, the best way for you to do that in order to insulate the Infracom from ever becoming a platform that would be used by these members to probably muddle up the investigation is to cite them, file an ethics complaint. So that's going to be a separate venue and mas maganda po yun. But wala pong apart from Toby Chanko, wala naman pong nag-file or nag-submit ng kanilang complaint sa Ethics Committee, particularly those members that they think are really involved in the flood control mess, no? So, yung sa
Hindi po ba
Infracom
nag-submit naman po laban kay Congressman Zaldico ng ethics complaint si Congressman Chanco?
Yes. Yeah, tama. Sama nga. Sa sinabi ko nga, apart from Toby Chanko, no other members of the House.
Okay, apart from. Okay. Pero ano po if Congress does this investigation not just as guiding the power of the purse, no, but also in aid of legislation, how do we make sure that safeguards are in place given that yun nga po ito po ay dumadaan sa mga ahensya, sa DPWH, sa COA, sa DBM, sa LGU. Paano po natin masisiguro na hindi po mangyayari ulit ito? Ano po ba, meron po bang mga balak na ihain na panukala to be able to improve on the checks and balances here?
Well, number one, we have to improve on the geotagging system by the DPWH. Kailangan lahat po ng mga big ticket projects like yung mga bridges, no, major bridges, mga flood control, are really based on the needed, based really on the assessed and reviewed and inspected areas kung saan dapat ilalagay. I think it's a matter of really rationalizing kung ano yung priority ng DPWH pagdating doon sa mga national funded programs, bridges, national highways, flood control, drainage system, etc. So dapat talagang based doon po 'yon sa kanilang
pero ayun po ay sa DPWH, pero sa kumare sa COA po ay sila po ay pumapasok lamang to do post audit.
That's why
Hindi po ba parang pwedeng agahan? Oo.
Actually, that's what we've been trying to push, no? Even during the previous Congress, na magkaroon naman sila ng pre-audit. Kasi doon nagkakaproblema when the damage has been done nga, ika nga, no? Saka pa sila magsasabi ng ano. So, mas maganda nga may mga periodic assessment ang COA na ginagawa, no? Para po makita nila, hindi lang sila clerical dapat. Dapat talagang may tao sila na pupunta doon sa mga lugar na yan to assess really. We've been pushing for that, no? Yung pre-audit, at least magkaroon ng pre-audit na system ang COA rather than solely depend on the post-audit. Kasi sa post-audit nakikita natin ang dami ng mga anomalya hindi
Oo.
lang sa
And what would be needed to get that done? And ito po ba ay pwedeng
ma-legislate?
ma-legislate?
May charter kasi ang COA
So nasa proseso po nila.
Yes,
Oo.
but we are also pushing them to at least do some adjustments because lahat to nag-a-adjust I mean, in terms of legislation, we are already responding to the current situation on the ground and the needed reform that we have introduced in to the existing policies that we have. But we also need some sort of a sign of good faith from the agencies. No? If they can do it all by their own without necessarily asking Congress. Kasi when you say legislation, kasi medyo tatagal yan. You still have the Senate to act on the same same proposals that we might file or we might introduce in the House. Pagpalagay natin pumasa po sa House of Representatives, if there's no counterpart bill in the Senate, wala rin pong mangyayari dyan. That's why sinasabi po natin, we're also giving a free hand for each agencies to do its own adjustment. No? May administrative power naman po sila to reform their own policies. No? Kung if it's about administrative matter, sana hindi na umabot sa legislation, sana hindi na umabot sa House. Gawin na nila. That's why we've been pushing them to do some pre-audit system, the policy.
All right, maraming salamat. Thank you so much for answering our questions. And I know we do hope for a better budget process coming from the House. Thank you so much for your time today. We have House Deputy Majority Leader and Appropriations Committee Vice Chairperson Zia Alonto Adyong.
Thank you, Gretchen. Thank you, guys.
Up next, the real cost of corruption. We'll break that down and its impact on the economy with RCBC Chief Economist Michael Ricaport. Stay tuned. Morning Matters will be back. Good morning, I'm Gretchen Ho, and here in Morning Matters, we talk about the most pressing issues and give you the context behind the headlines. The U.S. State Department has flagged corruption as a persistent challenge in both the public and private sectors in the Philippines. In its 2025 Investment Climate Report, the agency noted that the country's complex, slow, and sometimes corrupt judicial system inhibits the timely and fair resolution of commercial disputes. The 2024 Transparency International Corruption Perceptions Index ranks the Philippines 114th out of 180 countries, a position it has maintained since 2019. Meanwhile, the Securities and Exchange Commission warns that corruption has cost the stock market a staggering 1.7 trillion pesos in value in just 3 weeks. The SEC said the flood control scandal has badly shaken investor confidence, describing corruption as a weapon of mass wealth destruction. And to help us make sense of those supposed economic losses, we have Michael Ricafort, Chief Economist at RCBC, joining us this morning. Welcome to Morning Matters.
Good morning, Gretchen, and to your viewers.
Okay, Mike, we lost 1.7 trillion in market capitalization within 3 weeks in August. Help us understand that. Break it down in layman's terms. What is market capitalization and what does it mean to lose 1.7 trillion pesos?
Actually, Gretchen, it's a function of market forces, the share price or the stock price. It's more sensitive to market sentiment than anything else. So it's different, say, to the fundamentals of the country, the economic fundamentals. For instance, it's also different from the, say, business fundamentals like sales, net earnings. So normally in the financial markets, like they're more dynamic every day. They adjust based on, well, largely based on market sentiment, and it looks like the political noises have weighed the sentiment on, especially on the local stock market. Though if you look at the figures, well, it all started, of course, the anti-corruption measures during the SONA, July 28. So since then, the stock market has declined by about 4.4%. It reached a low of 5,905 na September 30. Now, it's a bit better already at almost 6,100. So it already improved by almost 200 points, Gretchen. So it's really dynamic. Why? Because foreign investors, especially the portfolio investors, they're here to, well, their motivation is to make money. That's the reason why they place their funds here. Although it's different from foreign direct investments, such as putting up factories, production facilities. This one, investment in the financial markets like stocks, bonds, and also, of course, they use the currency. So the financial markets are very sensitive because they do reflect. They're recently weighed by the political noises. But so far now, looks like the worst is over. But the thing is, it's really the signaling, because global investors, as encouraged by global regulators in recent years, they do encourage investors, actually both local and foreign, to patronage governments, countries, companies that adhere to ESG standards, meaning to say that they adhere to, or their policies are friendly, and they adhere to pertaining to, and E, that's for environment, the sustainability. Then S, that's social, human rights, friendly to people. And finally, G, governance. It all starts and ends with good governance. So the rule of law, the strong institutions of law. So those are very important. It's an uncompromising view from the point of view of foreign investment. So therefore, there's no way to go but to really improve governance standards, because people now, investors, whether retail, wholesale, institutional, they're becoming more intelligent now. They do expect countries, businesses, industries to strictly adhere to ESG standards. And because adherence to ESG standards, that signals good business.
Okay. So, ibig sabihin, no, kung ngayon, dahil bumaba yung value, no, it must be that people are selling, right? So, kung bumaba, hindi po ba bibili din ng mga tao, and therefore, the effect of this is pretty much temporary? Do you see this lasting longer than it should?
And naghihintay ng resulta yung mga investors, yung mga tao. Kailangan may resulta na rule of law, di ba? Justice must be served, no? Ipapaigtingin yon. Big or small, level playing field, mahirap, mayaman, maliit, malaking individual o institusyon. Kumbaga, ano yan dapat yung elevate yung level of governance. Kasi timeliness din, importante yun. Di ba? Kasi nga kung petty crimes na paparusahan, no? Kumbaga, as the saying goes, justice delayed is justice denied, no? Kaya tinitignan talaga, wait and see. Okay, umaandar, may developments, yes. May mga investigasyon, yes. Merong mga sanctions, may mga other measures na rin, no? Para yung papunta doon sa tamang direksyon na yon. Pero titignan talaga kung meron talagang resulta. Of course, this is based on international best practices. Dapat consistent doon kasi marami ng kumbaga among investors, may mga activist investors na rin eh. No? Talagang papaglaban nila 'yan, no? Kasi yung mga pondo na 'yan, no, bakit sila ganun ka-exacting do sa mataas na governance standards, no? Kasi kung ano yung pera yan ng alibawa, yung pera yan ng mga retirees sa buong mundo, no? Especially from developed countries, naghahanap yan ng investments around the world, including ours, tinitignan nila yan. So kung merong kinukumpara nila yung mga bansa kung saan mas maganda yung governance standards, ito yun ang pipiliin nila, no?
How safe
there's
their money is in this market. Oo. But
yeah, go ahead, Gretchen.
But Mike, how might this be felt by ordinary Filipinos who don't participate in the stock market? Paano kaya mararamdaman ng ordinaryong Pilipino po ito?
Siguro, tama. Yung ramdam yan, yung mga investors, no? Yung mga namumuhunan. Whether local investor yan or foreign investor. Pero yung common na tao, anong impact sa kanila? No? Maaaring indirect kasi yung mga ibang maraming pension funds, retirement funds, meron din silang investment sa financial markets natin. Maaring malaki yung alokasyon sa fixed income, yung mga safer havens like treasury bonds, treasury bills, no, yung mga government securities, no. May mga safe yan, medyo sigurado yung return doon, no. Among the safest havens din yon despite the volatility. Pero meron din kasing portion, maybe smaller allocation, meron din sa equity. So it could indirectly affect din yung actuarial life na tinatawag ng mga pensyon, no? Yung mga pension fund, retirement fund. So kung kumikita yung stock market, hahaba yung retirement, hahaba yung rather
kasi ito
yung
pong pera
actuarial
ay
life.
naka-invest din. Oo.
Yeah,
Sa ibang
ano yun?
instrument. Oo.
Yeah, yung mas mahaba yung actuarial life, mas kumikita, may yung benepisyo na mararamdaman sa loob ng maraming taon, ng maraming
Correct.
retirees.
How about foreign exchange? I have my mom has been watching out for the foreign exchange kasi she's abroad, no? And sabi niya, ang taas. Parang pataas na pataas, inaantay niya bumaba. Is it because of corruption also and everything that's been going on in Congress?
Partly, Gretchen, mula last month, no? Kasi nag-stabilize na nga yan, mga 57 levels, no? Ganito pa nga, mga 56-90. Tapos yung kasagsagan ng political noises, umakyat yan to 58 levels, as high as around 58-40s, 58-30s. Pero ngayon nag-stabilize kapon, nagsara sa 57-95. Bago kung maalala, balik tanaw natin, no? Nagsimula lahat yan, di ba, nung SONA, sinabi ng Pangulo na yung team niya, mahiya naman kayo. Sinabi doon sa, doon nagsimula yung anti-corruption measures and moves, no? That was July 28. Back then, it was 57.20. So ngayon, 57.95. So umakit siya na 75 centavos. Kaya medyo pumirmi dito sa 58 levels. Ang lang, kumbaga parang it just happened now, fourth quarter, mabuti na lang fourth quarter na padating yung mga remittances, no? Pagdating sa Pasko, sa Christmas season. So merong seasonal increase in conversion, yung mga dollars na dumadating from OFW sa mga pamilya nila, convert yon pang Christmas spending yon during the holidays, no? Taon-taon yon. Ayun na lang yung pag-asa natin, kaya medyo lumalakas na siya ngayon. Magmula, nagsimula yung October. October, November, December. Siyempre, yung mga exporter, ganun din, no? Magbebenta sila, habulin nila yung baka pag-export na sila, makukuha yung benta nila sa export, so convert into pesos, ganun din yung ibang kumikita ng dollars, no? Yung mga BPO, syempre, pang Christmas bonus din, no? Tapos yung mga foreign tourists, kasi marami rin magbabalik bayan, no? It just happened kasi, kaya tumaas din ng mga September, tail end kasi ng importation season yon. Third quarter kasi yon. To say, I've been talking to many importers for the past 20 to 30 years. Consistent yung sinasabi nila. Pagka yung third quarter, July, August, September, namimili talaga sila kasi magpo-produce sila, to prepare for the seasonal increase, if not the peak in sales and demand during the fourth quarter. Whether that's for the domestic market, mag-stockpiling sila, no, mag-produce, stockpile, daling sa warehouses, ship dito logistically, locally or sa export market. So medyo tail end na yun, Gretchen. Kaya medyo umakit din ng third quarter yung dollar, no? So ngayon ano na,
Okay,
seasonal
okay.
yung kita naman na yung mga
So it's not just because of this corruption scandal. It's also a seasonal effect on the forex. What other industries are you looking at that could be vulnerable?
well, siguro yung ano, well, ngayon kasi may other factors like yung kay Trump, di ba? Yung higher tariffs, yung mga trade war, yung resulting, yung mga other protectionist measures. So yung export sector medyo vulnerable, no? Kasi tumaas yung tariff, 19% sa Pilipinas, meaning mas magiging mahal yung exports natin. Hindi lang sa atin, pati yung mga exporter ng buong mundo. So hihina yung demand for exports. Kaya nga ihina yung global trade, ihina yung global investments. Well, wait and see. Sumasakit yung ulo ng mga ibang exporter, no? Kasi baka nga mangyari, mag-diversify sila away from the US, no? At magbenta elsewhere around the world, including ours. So baka magdansaan din yung ibang imports dito sa ating bansa, no? We're a net importing country kasi our trade deficit last year was $54 billion, no? Nag-record high na $57 billion noong 2022. So medyo makikinabang tayo, pero syempre yung ibang industriya, kung dadami yung imports, baka ma-threaten din yung ibang local industries natin na mag-indirect competition with these imports, no? Dahil they need to diversify away,
Correct.
babagal yung global economic growth, tapos syempre may 1% tax rate sa US, sa remittances from the US. Although, sige, negligible naman yon, pero mga 8 to 9 billion pesos yun per year. What would otherwise have been diba, pinambayad sa 1% tax doon. That's yung, diba, yung One Big Beautiful Bill noon, 4th of July sinay ni Trump yun, no? That would be effective next year. So, dapat dito na lang gastusin sana yun. So, medyo may mag-weigh ng konti. At syempre, dahil nga doon sa mga external factors na yon, minsan may ibang geopolitical risk din, diba? Yung mga developments sa, yung mga conflict sa Russia-Ukraine, sa Middle East. Although sa Middle East yan, medyo may nag-uusap na towards peace na yung di ba? Israel-Hamas. So, ayan. Pero binabantayan pa rin natin yung mga other geopolitical risks pertaining to China, no? Yung mga with Taiwan, etc. So, yung may konting slowdown.
Looking ahead, how much of a drag could the corruption scandal be on growth targets for 2026? We do take note that DPWH is under government spending, and if ipinatigil yung mga proyektong ito, may epekto yan sa infrastructure spending, government spending, etc., etc. So how are our growth targets faring for this year, and how could the impact be?
Maring ihina, realistically, Gretchen, kasi this is not the first time. May precedents na yan, past administrations. Pag may anti-corruption measures, anti-corruption na drive, mas maingat sila maggastos. Gusto nila above board lahat at maayos, walang bahid ng corruption. Babagal yung infrastructure spending, no? Mabagal yung government spending. Malaki yung ambag nun sa ekonomiya. So may konting slowdown. Although sige, yung iba namang nirepurpose naman at niredeploy yung funds naman. Niredeploy naman yun sa, halimbawa, social services, di ba? Yun yung, halimbawa, sa DSWD, sa Department of Agriculture. So maring yun na mag-offset naman doon. Pero that's the reality of it. Pero parang blessing in disguise kasi lumalaki yung budget deficit kasi ng bansa natin, yung ng gobyerno, mas malaki yung ginagastos kaysa kinikita. So, that's one way to narrow the budget deficit and to slow down, kasi nagre-record na yung debt levels eh. Siyempre, pag may budget deficit, kailangan utangin yun to finance the budget deficit. So, mababawasan yun. At nakita naman natin yun, like during the late former President Pinoy's time. Doon nangyari yung ganung bagay, no? Mula election, anti-corruption team, pinatupad nila yon. Bumakal yung government spending, yes. Pero yung debt to GDP, nag-improve naman. Bumaba yung percentage ng debt compared to the economy, no? At we got the first ever investment grade rating ng 2013 at na-sustain naman yon with subsequent upgrades sa credit rating natin. Hanggang bago mag-pandemic, 1 to 3 notches above the minimum investment grade. So, tsaka tatangkilikin yon pag good governance, gusto yun ng global investors. Lalakas yung financial markets natin, no? Ayun ang gusto nilang mangyari, yung resulta, no? Kasi ano na talaga nila, particular nila doon sa good governance, based on global best practices, lalo na very much particular, yung strict adherence to the ESG standards sa tinatawag.
O yan po ang hinahanap nating lahat. Pero apektado raw itong high-end luxury real estate. Itong mga, may mga reports na lumalabas mga bumibili ng bahay sa mga high-end villages. Medyo may agam-agam na. May nakikita ba kayo doon?
Partly, Gretchen. Kasi
O baka
yun nga yung
temporary lang
allegations.
din ito? O baka temporary
Oo.
lang din?
Kasi partly yun nga yung allegations, di ba? Na dun china-channel yung ibang mga pondo na kaduda-duda, yung mga questionable, no? So, kaya maring well, kasi it depende do sa buyer, yung investor pool Kung talagang yung mga legitimate na buyers ng high-end, pwede naman masustain yun. Pero kung galing nga doon sa mga questionable na transactions, and yun nga, yung team ngayon, di ba, yung anti-corruption. So, maring may konting dent. No? Let's see. We'll wait and see,
Okay.
Gretchen, kung how sustainable. Kasi meron din naman mga mamumuhunan na ibang mga both local and foreign na buyers din on these high-end projects. No? Iba naman talaga dahil for estate planning purposes, etc. No? Meron din naman. So, let's see. Parang, kasi meron resilient naman yun in recent years So, but of course, despite all the allegations, wait and see pa rin kung how,
Correct.
if that would make a dent, no? Indeed, di ba? Kung purely talagang yung mga legitimate na transactions and funding yung nag-channel dito sa mga higher-end property projects.
Okay. We got to remember, important to hear, good governance and results. Thank you so much for weighing in on with us on the impact of corruption to the economy. We have Michael Ricafort, Chief Economist of RCBC.
Thank you so much, Gretchen, and to your viewers.
Public Works Secretary Vince Dizon has ordered the construction of a detour bridge in Alcala, Cagayan following the collapse of Bigatan Bridge. Dizon said the detour bridge is targeted for completion within 2 months. The secretary also ordered inspections of other bridges in the province to prevent similar incidents. The 45-year-old Bigatan Bridge gave way Monday afternoon after several overloaded trucks crossed it.
Hopefully, even less than 2 months, maximum 2 months, nakatayo na yung detour bridge natin dito. Okay, so magmomobilize na tayo ng emergency at disaster funds. Nagbigay na ako ng go signal kay RD na magkaroon na ng emergency na procurement para masimulan na agad. And hopefully 2 months maximum or even less RD, matayo na ito. Harvest season ngayon No, panahon ng ani at kita naman natin, pagay ang daga dito at hindi lang to importante para sa Cagayan. Dahil dito ang pinagkakakitaan ng mga kababayan natin dito sa Cagayan Valley, pero importante ito para sa buong bansa.
Moving on over to weather, Pag-asa continues to monitor tropical storm Nakri outside the Philippine area of responsibility. It was last spotted 1,505 kilometers east of extreme northern Luzon. According to Pag-asa, Nakri may enter PAR today, October 9. While it could intensify, the tropical storm is not expected to affect the country's weather. And in sports, imports in the PVL Reinforced Conference are now cleared to play after their international transfer certificates were activated. The clearance came a day late for several reinforcements who missed their opening matches. The PVL says the ITC requirement ensures compliance with FIVB rules, warning that playing without it could lead to sanctions and affect a player's eligibility abroad. Meanwhile, Chocomucho's Tia Andaya is still awaiting clearance, forcing her to sit out the team's first game. And that wraps up today's episode of Morning Matters. We hope we've given you the right start to your morning. Let's go ahead and make the day matter. My name is Gretchen Hall. We are One News, all sides, all the time.